Welcome, and thank you for your interest in ExecuKeys from Informediate. Today, in this session, I'd like to demonstrate a couple of new features in our new version 3 of ExecuKeys. Let's start by taking a look at the very first chart on our main page. In this particular example, as the legend indicate, the blue bars represent sales year to date, and the green bars that represent gross margin from moving average cost year to date. Now, it's a common request for many of our customers, in addition to charting sales and gross margin side by side, they also might like to chart gross margin percentage on the same chart. Well, the fundamental problem in the past is, as you can see here, sales are measuring in millions or hundreds of thousands and margin in hundreds of thousands, where gross margin percentage is usually measured in double digits. So from a simple matter of scale, if we were to add a third data point on this chart to show margin, it would pretty much appear as a flat line, because again of the double digits versus the hundreds of thousands. So now with ExecuKeys version 3, we can establish a second axis and chart that gross margin percent and overlay that on top of the bar. Now, to proceed with that objective, it's important to understand that the data from ExecuKeys actually originates in corresponding web query reports. In the name in the title bar of the ExecuKeys object corresponds to the name of the web query report that we're deriving our data from. So in this case, we want to take a quick look at EK Reps Cuss Groups item year to date. So I'm going to jump over to web query, and I've retrieved that report from my saved report list. And now if we look at the parameters here, we can see the type of information that's available on this report. So first we see the drill down sequence beginning with company, branch, sales rep, customer ID, product group, item description, and invoice date. And for those of you that are new to ExecuKeys, the drill down sequence, and we'll be able to click through the multi-dimensions, is simply defined by how I've ordered those columns. So if I want to add more levels to the drill down, I can add other columns as dimensions, or if I want less, I can simply subtract from the columns that are there. The other key part, the second series of column names here, are the actual measurements that will be available to chart. If we want to chart the gross margin percentage, we need to make sure that we have that in the corresponding web query report. In this case that we do, GM percent moving average cost. Now there's one more important rule related to ExecuKeys objects from web query reports, and that is if we have a calculated column such as gross margin for moving average cost, the other columns that are dependent in that calculation must also be on the report. In this case, gross margin for moving average cost in dollars is there, and we're going to divide that by the sales dollars to produce the gross margin percentage. So we're good in terms of having the elements of the calculation. From the web query side of the equation, it looks like we're good to go. Now let's go back to ExecuKeys. In order to be able to change the content in ExecuKeys, the user must be designated as an administrator. Now in this case I am. To get into the administrative panel, I'll just come to the top drop-down menu here, and in this particular case I want to discuss object definitions. So I'll click on the object buttons, and the rows that you see here correspond to the tabs across the top of the page, keeping in mind that each tab can be secured to individual users or groups based on the sensitivity of the information and how much information you want to share with whom. Now in this particular case we're working in that first tab, the main, and the first object is the report that's targeted here. So we want to edit that object definition, and we're going to see our first tab, which are the general parameters or where we get the data and so forth, and then we want to take a look at the second and third tabs in this case. So in the past there was only one axis available, and you can see here in this case it's formatted as dollars no decimal. But now we'd like to add a second axis specifically for the GM margin percent, so we might label that accordingly. And then we can choose then what precision and format we want to deal with that number. And as you might guess, since we're going with charting a margin percent, we can use a percentage format with or without decimal places. I'll choose 2 decimal places. 90 degrees is a good label rotation, and what I'm talking about is when we display the names and the values, instead of displaying them horizontally, we're going to rotate them 90 degrees so they actually display vertically, which basically allows for a cleaner format without the titles stepping on each other. The other change we need to make is in the data series. So currently we have two different data series maps, sales and gross margin dollars. So in this case we'll want to add the new data series. We could stay with a vertical bar, but I think in this case the line chart is actually going to be easier to read. Again, we want to format that accordingly. So in this case I'm going to pick the percentage with 2 decimal places. Then I'll choose what measurement we want to chart. In this case, gross margin percentage for moving average cost. And then finally, I'll choose the second axis. We'll click the Save button to save our changes. We'll click the Home button to go back to where we were. And in a moment, the screen will refresh, and we can now see our bar chart isolating gross margin moving average cost. If we want to look at a full screen version of that, we can click on the right View Large. And now you'll see that chart with greater width, still being able to scroll to the extreme edges of the report and so forth. So now you can easily see that gross margin average trend overlaid on the sales and gross margin numbers. And of course, one of the other great features of ExecuKeys, again, is the multi-level drill down ability. So this report or object by definition started at the sales rep level. If I pick an individual rep, I can then drill down to the customers. So this is the largest customer for that rep. In this case, we're using customer IDs instead of names just to protect the confidentiality of the information. I can click on a customer, and that will break down by product group what they've purchased. And then I can click a product group. It'll break it down by supplier. Pick a supplier. It'll break it down by item. And I can go as deep as I want to go. In this case, the item description is the last stop that I've defined. So again, if I want to change that drill down sequence or use different dimensions, all I need to do is go back to the web query report, change the sequence of the columns I have here, save the web query report, and refresh the ExecuKeys object, and I'll be good to go. Notice the secondary scale over here on the right corresponding to our gross margin percentage. And again, if you hover over the data points, it'll show you those values. Notice also, in this case, when I talked about rotating the labels 90 degrees, so you can see they're kind of stacked vertically, which helps them from stepping over each other. So it's a much cleaner presentation. And keep in mind that you can always toggle between chart and grid. So one big difference is usually you're only going to chart a couple data points, but when you go to the grid view, you'll be able to see all the related measures that were in the underlying web query report. So in this case, we're only charting sales, gross margin, and gross margin percentage, but the other columns are there for you to use, filter, sort, and so forth in the grid view. And again, you could toggle between chart and grid at any level, move up or down the ladder one step, or back to the top, or back to the page from where we came. One other feature I'd like to talk about quickly is the introduction of new color palettes. Over the years, we've learned that colors, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. What's attractive to one person may not be attractive to others for any number of reasons. So you can now select the color palettes that are going to be used on your chart. And it's very easy to control. Again, we're going to go up to the admin function. Only admins can edit this. Chart palette is where we can define this, and you can pick from any number of predefined themes, or you can customize your own theme. So if you want to change to one of the out-of-the-box themes, you just click on that. If you want to customize your theme, you just right-click on that and edit the palette. And so I can edit any of these colors. Let's say, in many of the charts, the first column will be one data point. The second column, it's often to have 2 data points on a chart, or in any kind of comparative time reports, the third column is going to be the difference. So let's say we want to make that a little bolder. Right now it's kind of a palish yellow. Let's say we want to make that a little brighter, and possibly even make it a shade of red. So we're going to edit that, and we can choose, we can use the red, green, blue coordinates. You can use the hex number to get exactly where you want, or you can just kind of scroll around here on the color wheel. So maybe I want to use a brighter orange in this case. So I'll just move there, click OK. I kind of get a look at that. Now it looks like I have something similar over here, so let's edit this one as well and make this more of a yellow. And that's kind of a greenish yellow, so I'll just slide it up a little bit, make it more of a brighter yellow. So I've edited those two data points. I'm going to say OK. When I'm done, I'm going to go back to my home page, and we'll immediately notice on our first set of charts here, now we can see we've got a orange data points, a little bit brighter, a little bit starker contrast for these comparisons. Thanks again for your interest. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. If you prefer email, please send your email to support@Informediate.com. Thanks again for your time and interest. Have a great day.